Hey there, I'm going to read chapter 5 of The Buffalo Hunt, the final chapter, and the title is With the Buffalo Gone. Year after year without fail, the buffalo drifted back and forth across the plains, in tune with the seasons. Usually they traveled in small bands, but during the late summer rutting season, they gathered in enormous herds that numbered hundreds of thousands of animals. A truly great herd might be 50 miles long and take days to pass by. Indians had hunted the buffalo for thousands of years without making much of a dent in the herds. Sometimes they killed more animals than they could use. When they drove a herd over a cliff, they could not always carry all of the meat. But for the most part, the Indians were not wasteful. They hunted only when they needed meat and hides. As white people came to the plains, the buffalo herds began to dwindle, and by the 1800s, trading posts were springing up all over the West. White traders wanted buffalo robes and tongues for profitable markets in the East. In exchange, they offered guns, tools, tobaccos, whiskey, and trinkets. The Indians had always hunted for their own needs. Now, by killing a few more buffalo, they could obtain the white man's goods. Soon the Indians were killing buffalo for their hides and tongues alone. Tongues packed in salt were shipped in barges down the Missouri River to be sent to the cities of the East, where they were sold as expensive delicacies. Buffalo robes became fashionable as lap robes and blankets. White people had them made into fur coats. During the 1830s and 1840s, hundreds of thousands of robes were shipped east. This artwork is titled Last of the Buffalo. By then, white hunters were beginning to kill more buffalo than the Indians. Pioneers traveling westward in covered wagons shot the animals for food along the way, scaring off the entire herds. Before long, few buffalo could be found along the great trails leading west. Then the United States Army hired professional hunters to supply buffalo meat to western military posts. And as railroads were built across the prairies and the plains, white hunters furnished buffalo meat for the railroad construction crews. Buffalo hunting became a popular sport. Many travelers felt that a trip to the West wasn't complete unless they had shot themselves a buffalo. American millionaires and European noblemen toured the West in style, with servants to hand them their guns and champagne to drink after the hunt. Railroads began to feature special excursion trains through buffalo country. And as the trains chugged along, passengers could poke their guns through the open window and fire away at the grazing herds. By the 1860s, Indian tribes found that the buffalo were disappearing from their traditional hunting grounds, and when they went elsewhere to hunt, they were followed almost immediately by white hunters, soldiers, and settlers. Wherever the whites are established, the buffalo is gone, complained the Sioux chief White Cloud, and the red hunters must die of hunger. Indians who once had been friendly to the white people vowed to go on the warpath, alarmed by the large-scale slaughter of their herds. Angry warriors from many tribes banded together. They began to attack wagon trains, ranch houses, and railroad construction crews. There were still about 8 million buffalo left on the plains in the 1870s, and when a newly invented tanning process sealed the fate of the remaining herds. For the first time, commercial tanneries in the East could turn buffalo hides into expensive leather. A single hide now brought as much as $3 more than a factory worker could earn in a week in those days. A professional hide hunter could bag as many as 200 buffalo in one day. Organized bands of hide hunters shot their way south from Kansas to Texas, armed with powerful long-range rifles and telescopic sights. They began to slaughter buffalo at the rate of 1 million a year, and as the animals fell, gangs of skinners stripped them of their valuable hides and left their carcasses to rot on the prairie. Indian war parties attacked the hide hunters wherever they found them, but the hunters could not be stopped. Within a few years, the Indians saw their main source of food, clothing, and shelter vanish. At one time, perhaps 60 or 70 million buffalo had roamed the plains. By the early 1880s, the endless herds had been wiped out. Only a few hundred wild buffalo were still hiding out in remote mountains and valleys. With the buffalo gone, the proud and independent Plains Indians became a conquered people. Their way of life was destroyed. Their hunting grounds were taken over by the white ranchers and settlers. They were swept by starvation and disease, and their great hunting tribes were confined to reservations, where they depended on government food rations. Their children were sent to boarding schools to learn the language and the customs of the white man. Scavengers of the Plains is the title of that drawing. The days of the buffalo hunters had faded like a dream, but Indian storytellers still gather on winter nights to keep the old tales alive. They speak of a time when buffalo ruled the plains, and the Indian warriors rode out to meet them. The title of that painting was called "The Herd of the Moavi," and there's a song titled "The Sioux Song," and it goes, "I go to kill the buffalo. The Great Spirit sent the buffalo. On the hills and the plains and the woods. So give me my bow, give me my bow. I go to kill the buffalo." The end.